We're here with our friend Chip Roy. Chip, how are you?
Mark, I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to hear. Well, you did something very righteous today. Tell everybody about the ICC, this bill that you put into the hopper and you and Mast and others pushed to passage. Bipartisan votes in support of it, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, great. Brian Mast is a good friend. He's the new chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and Brian is a good friend. And we worked together to move forward legislation that would basically sanction the so-called International Criminal Court, which your listeners are smart enough to know is a lawless, rogue regime that has been targeting specifically Prime Minister Netanyahu and the Minister of Defense for Israel, and the former Minister of Defense, and issuing arrest warrants for them for simply defending Israel, defending their country, something you and I both support. But also, and this is important because, you and I both have supporters and friends and listeners who, consider themselves appropriately America first. It is, in fact, America first to stand with Israel, number one. Number two, it is America first to fight an international criminal court which will use the same powers that they are using to go after Prime Minister Netanyahu to go after us, to go after our men and women in uniform, because this is a rogue entity. We're a sovereign nation. Israel's a sovereign nation. So we introduced legislation to sanction the hell out of them for doing what they're doing. Prime Minister Netanyahu is a great friend of this country, a great leader for Israel, standing athwart the absolute abomination that is Hamas, that is undermining not just the people of Israel and our country, but the people of frickin' Gaza, because they're terrorists. We recognize them as terrorists. They've killed Americans. They've killed Israelis. So today we passed another bill. We passed this last July. Chuck Schumer killed it in the Senate. Joe Biden killed it. We passed it again this morning, the second bill we passed in this Congress. 45 Democrats joined us. I loved sparring with Jim McGovern on the floor when he was like, oh, this is a partisan Republican bill. Nobody cares about it. I was like, well, what about the 42 Democrats who voted for it last year? This year was 45. So a good step forward. Now the Senate needs to pass it. I was talking to Lindsey Graham tonight. They're going to try to move it, and hopefully the Senate will move it forward, and hopefully Donald Trump will sign it into law once he's sworn in next week.
Well, this is fantastic. What are some of the things that this bill would do?
Well, this would put in place sanctions, very specific sanctions. And by the way, we worked hard with people who are expert on this matter, people to ensure that they're real sanctions on the people that would carry it out, the judges involved, their families, to make sure that there's teeth so that they won't get away with carrying this out with the court. Because, as you and I both know, the court has no jurisdiction over our people. So if they're going to try to carry this out against Prime Minister Netanyahu, or like they've done in the past, try to carry it out against American soldiers or men and women in uniform, then we need to be able to hold that against them. So this would sanction them, financial resources, banking resources, and other stuff, with just the individuals that are involved with the court, as well as the prosecutor, as well as their family members, because often they will obfuscate that and get around it with family members.
You mentioned a very important point here. This court sees no limit to its jurisdiction. It would go after our Marines, it would go after our pilots, it would go after whomever this court wants to go after. You have a very corrupt prosecutor in this case who's got his own problems with, he's accused of kind of molesting women, and his brother served time in prison for pedophilia. He's a very freakish, strange guy. Now, the truth is, Chip Roy, that Joe Biden could have stepped in. He could have put pressure on this court. He could have put pressure on this prosecutor. He got his job in part with the support of the Biden regime, but he wouldn't do it. And you're right. Chuck Schumer, who they tell me is Jewish, by the way, Chuck Schumer blocked it in the Senate. Biden said he wasn't going to sign it. So our government and the Democrat Party effectively was going to allow this court to pursue the Jewish prime minister of the Jewish state and potentially our own troops if they got away with this, right?
That's exactly right. And I can't emphasize enough for all the listeners out there the extent to which Chuck Schumer and the Democrats blocked this, knowing full well there was overwhelming bipartisan support. My belief is that if we get this on the Senate floor, we will get sufficient Democrat votes to support it. Now, it's not a lock because, Chuck Schumer's going to try to kill that. But I think there are several Democrats. In fact, there are two, I'm pretty sure two, former House members who voted for it last year in the House who are now in the Senate. And if you add that to the Republicans, you add it to Fetterman, we're up to 56 or 7. It's all we got to do is put it on the floor and put some pressure, and we can pass it. Now, look, can President Trump and his administration go even further than the bill? Sure, because now we have a president who gives a damn about the country and gives a damn about Israel. But Chuck Schumer didn't. Joe Biden doesn't. And this is the reality that we're facing and why Israel has been left alone. Israel has been standing on an island defending Western civilization while Joe Biden allows our country to be the laughingstock and leaves Israel alone having to fight terrorism. And the reality is now there's help on the way. God bless President Trump and our ability now to actually stand with Israel. But we need to stand as a Congress because it's important to call out our Democratic colleagues who refuse to actually do what we're supposed to do. I'm really proud, by the way, Mark, that we got 45 Democrats.
Yeah.
You know, if you would have listened to, Jim McGovern and these leftists on the floor, you would have thought there was no chance we would get that many votes. 45, although I wish it were higher, that is a really good number to demonstrate that, look, there are some Democrats who recognize what's actually going on here with Hamas attacking Israel after October 7th and generally.
Did you lose any Republicans? Any Republicans who vote no?
Not to my knowledge, Mark. We had a few missing because it's a weird time, right? We had the Carter funeral, so we lost some of our guys who went home, so our numbers were a little lower. But I don't think we lost a single Republican. And in fact, my good friend Thomas Massey and you and I, Thomas is a good friend. We disagree on some of the foreign policy issues on Israel, for example. He voted present, and that for him, for Thomas,
for him, that's a big deal.
That's a big deal because we recognize what's going on right now in terms of Israel, in terms of what this means for our country. And I don't want to speak for Thomas. My point is I don't think we had a no vote. I think Thomas was the only present vote.
Right here with Chip Roy. I want to read something to you, Chip Roy. Supreme Court refuses to delay Trump's, they call it hush money sentencing. Washington Post, a divided Supreme Court refused to delay Trump's sentencing, clearing the way for the president-elect to face judgment in the New York courtroom as a divided court. And I think it was Coney Barrett who stabbed us in the back again.
No, that's what I just was looking at. I think it was Amy. Yep.
And I mean, what do you make of this? How does the court do something like this? Like it's going to go away? It's not going to go away. They've created a precedent here that is horrendous. And you're going to have these prosecutors. You're going to have these state judges. We're going to get involved in these cases. I know what they're going to say, Chip. It's going to be, well, this is a procedural issue. Go through the New York state. And so, wait a minute. New York doesn't have any jurisdiction here. This is a federal election law. I mean, this Amy Coney Barrett, to me, has been the biggest disaster and is becoming a disgrace. What do you think?
Well, look, first of all, she's had a number of different opinions that I've got serious problems with. We can go through that list in a separate call. But, like, on this issue in particular, obviously in a 5-4 decision where essentially I think the good guys, Alito and Thomas and Kavanaugh and Gorsuch, I think they reached the right conclusion. I mean, if I remember correctly, and I don't have it right in front of me, I was looking at it quickly because the opinion just came out. This was a stay request. And the stay was denied, with those 4 saying they would have granted the stay, and Amy Coney Barrett deciding with the 4 leftists to say that she would, I guess I should stop and say the 3 leftists and Roberts, that they would agree to, go ahead and, deny the stay request. Look, I think this is obviously a continuation of the lawfare. And I think that the Supreme Court, has a role here to ensure that the games aren't being played with the legal system that undermine the rule of law. And look, I'm actually somewhat uniquely qualified to opine on this in a way that I think is appropriate in that, for better or worse, some of our friends, mutual friends, you and I, we had some disagreements back in 2021 about the electors and other stuff. Some of us, Mike Lee and me and others, people you and I were friends, like we agree on 99% of things, reached some different conclusions about what to do on that stuff. But this is nakedly obvious, right? That's the thing, like where, like, this isn't some academic exercise. This is a lawfare exercise to try to undermine the duly elected president of the United States. And I've been on this side from the beginning. It's very obvious what they're doing. And the American people spoke loudly. This is supposed to matter. And if you politicize the justice system, then you no longer have the rule of law. That's what's at stake here. It's not just about Donald Trump. It's not just about some case. You know, we can all look at the details of this case and we recognize what's going on. This is undermining the justice system. So I think this is something where I haven't read the opinion, so I always hate to opine, but clearly what Justice Amy Coney Barrett did here, I think I disagree with. I mean, I'm a big fan of Clarence Thomas and Sam Alito, the other two guys on this case with Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. I'm quite confident I agree with their analysis, but I haven't read it yet, so I need to.
Well, here's the news. There is no analysis. Here's what they issued. Order and pending case. The application for stay presented to Justice Sotomayor and by her referred to the court is denied for, among other reasons, the following reason. First, the alleged evidentiary violations of President-elect Trump's state court trial can be addressed in the ordinary course on appeal. Second, the burden that sentencing will impose on the president-elect's responsibilities is relatively insubstantial in light of the trial court's stated intent to impose a sentence of unconditional discharge after a brief virtual hearing. That's it. That's it.
So that's bullcrap because
there's no analysis whatsoever. There's nothing.
Let's take the one point they made. Of course, and this is the crap the court does. They just issue some edict from on high saying the minimal impact on the president-elects in transition. This is a guy, the president, who has to go manage the mess that was created by this administration. Not just like, let's focus on Israel. Let's focus on Ukraine, Russia, China. Let's focus on what's going on with our economy. Let's focus on the border. Like, this is a guy who's got to step into the saddle and retake the reins of a country that has been left to spiral down the drain. They say, oh, minimal impact. Don't worry about it. Go sit in front of some freaking power-hungry judge in New York and say, oh, just do whatever that judge says and dance along to that lawfare, which is designed to undermine the presidency of the United States. It's absurd. And so, again, I'll look and see what the next step is. But if that's the entirety, I haven't read it. I assume that's the entirety of it. It's absurd.
That's all I found. I mean, if they have an opinion coming, they haven't issued it yet. And
right.
This whole burden thing is preposterous. And, of course, they've basically undermined the Department of Justice position for half a century, which has been, and by the way, folks need to know, an appeal of a criminal conviction is you're still going through the criminal process. It's not over till it's over. And so the idea that it won't burden, that it won't be that substantial, for them just to say something like that, and I'll tell you something else. This guy Roberts, and it appears that Barrett is really attached to him at the hip. This guy Roberts, he's a political player. He's so afraid about his reputation and the reputation of the court from the New York Times and the left. It's just a disgrace. 5-4, Kavanaugh did the right thing. Clearly, to have this hanging over a presidency. And what happens on the appeals, Chip Roy? What if he loses them in New York, which is a clear possibility?
Right. And then we throw our country into constitutional crisis. And by the way, this is the same Chief Justice Roberts, who basically declared what we all knew was going on with Obamacare with respect to, calling that just simply a tax. This is all politics. This is all political. And one of the things that I'm most proud of in my entire career wasn't as a member of Congress, and you know this well, it was as a lawyer on the Senate Judiciary Committee in 2005, ensuring that we got Sam Alito instead of Harriet Miers. With all due respect to her as a human being, Sam Alito has been a stalwart on the court, sitting alongside Clarence Thomas. Can you imagine how different it would be today if we hadn't worked to ensure that was the case back in 2005 under the Bush administration when they first made that nomination? These things matter. Every decision we make matters. And it's frankly why President Trump, in coming in, is so important. Yes, the next Supreme Court nominations, but also just the decisions that he'll make without regard to the politics that we're seeing. John Roberts wants to be popular in the cocktail circuit in D.C. or something. And importantly, this stuff matters. If you allow lawfare to occur, that's what's happened here. Then you're undermining the very rule of law that you're sworn to uphold.
Did you know that the Robertses, he and his wife, are friends with the Friedmans, Thomas Friedman? Did you know that?
You're telling me that. That's not surprising.
I mean, this whole, social circle stuff in Washington, D.C., That's why Harry Blackman, they sucked him in. They know how to do this stuff.
Yep.
The New York Times and the left and these they know how to do it. John Roberts is, I call him Hollywood John. John Roberts is very worried about his media. He's very worried about all that. You bring up the Obamacare decision. That decision had typos. It was a mistake. And I remember saying when I read it out loud, because it broke when I was on the air, I said, okay, wait a minute. Somebody changed their position at the last minute.
Yep.
I mean, at the very, and it was him. He did it.
Well, that's right. And let's look at the leak in the court that then resulted in what we saw unfolding in terms of the targeting of individuals and targeting of members of the court. That was purposeful in the Dobbs decision. And look, the bottom line.
Hold on, can I ask you about that? And the idea that they don't know who did it is so ridiculous.
It's preposterous.
Obviously, it was one of the liberal justices. At the idea that they don't know who did it, that he wouldn't bring in the FBI, so he's covering for somebody. He thinks he's protecting the court. He's destroying the court.
And here in the bottom line that we have in front of us is a president who is wanting to come in and change and defend this country, and a court that refuses to defend the presidency. Like, think about that for a second. You've got a state, like, boil it down to its basics. Forget all the politics. Forget all the history. Forget what the allegations are in the specifics. The fact of the matter is a state court tribunal is trying to undermine the duly elected president of the United States, which undermines the power behind the presidency in a fairly substantial election with a popular vote and the electoral college vote to lead our country. Now, again, I've not been shied away, and you and I have had some differences over there. I haven't shied away when I have a difference of opinion from the president. I'm Article 1. I'm supposed to speak up when I think, even if I'm wrong, Mark, I'm supposed to opine. But this is nakedly obvious. This is what is happening. And President Trump is trying to save this country, and these guys will try everything they can to stop it because they want us to slide into the abyss. They want us to be like the European nonsense that we're seeing unfold. They want us to be beholden to the world order. That's why they don't want us to fight the ICC. That's why 144 Democrats, or 140, I think the number was, Democrats opposed what we did today in passing the bill to sanction the ICC. That's why they opposed us trying to stop funding UNRWA, which funneled all the funds to kill our Jewish brothers and sisters in Israel through UNRWA, which we know what they were doing. They want that. President Trump opposes it, and they want to undermine Trump.
Let me tell you how I see this. This was a corrupt case. It violated at least four amendments in the Bill of Rights. It trampled all over federal judicial and legal authority, which this court is supposed to protect at all costs.
Yes, sir.
They eviscerated the Supremacy Clause. They know all this. And then they say, no, you know what? Let him be sentenced and let it go through that corrupt process with the New York courts, and then maybe he can come back. So they basically gave their imprimatur, their rubber stamp, to the process. And it's the process that's the problem.
All while recognizing he was the duly elected president of the United States. And it's purposeful, Mark. That's the part that we have to recognize here, because otherwise, why would they do it? Right? I mean, and that's what and they're doing it to undermine the presidency, because they don't want the president to have the power that he needs to have to walk into this administration and make the changes that are necessary to save our country, which means taking on the bureaucracy, which means taking on the world order, if you will, taking on the United Nations, taking on the World Health Organization, standing up for Israel, fighting the radical progressive left that wants to undermine our freedom. And this president wants to do that, actively. That's what he's seeking to do. And we've got to figure out how. Yep.
You know, this is why I miss the days of a Scalia or Rehnquist.
Yes.
That this court would have been, 6-3. That would have been that. But instead, we have Hollywood John. We have Barrett, who really is trying to be a sort of an Anthony Kennedy now. And she came as the most conservative. At least we thought she was, among all of them.
Well, and I think that was all based on life, which you and I are both pro-life. But I think people kind of got wrapped around the axle on that and forgetting that you still have to have a worldview that depends on Constitution, limited government, constitutional principles. And I think...
Well, we had 15 years of her writings. that was beyond
That's right.
that were beyond life. There was her approach to the Constitution. It seemed to be pretty solid. But like I say, they get to the court. You don't know. For the Democrats, they get to the court and they do what the Democrats think they're going to do.
And our guys move their direction. Our
guys always move
more radical. Yeah,
it's crazy.
A few.
All right,
don't.
brother.
Clarence
Good
Thomas
job today.
God bless you, brother. Hey,
you too,
we stand
Chip.
with Israel. We stand with America. Love you, brother.
You too. God bless, man.